Coach, why don't you start off the call by giving us a recap of your wrestling season this year?
A recap. Wow. Well, it was a long year. We had a lot of young guys in the lineup. Obviously, the highlight of our year was having Noah Adams have a great season, capped by a Big 12 championship and the number 2 seed at the NCAA tournament. We had a couple pretty solid dual meet wins, but with our young team, we're I think we're building for the future. But certainly, I think everything, all the buzz around our program right now is Noah Adams having an undefeated year.
Okay. Question from Robert Metzger, WTOV, a 2-part question up in Wheeling-Steubenville. What improvements did you see in Caleb Ray from Weirton, West Virginia throughout the season, and what do you expect to see from him next season?
We saw a lot of improvement from Caleb. First of all, he had one really fantastic win. He pinned a returning All-American, when we wrestled Oklahoma. But Caleb got a little bit bigger and stronger, got a little bit better in a lot of areas. The biggest improvement I saw was, his weight management. He was, in the first year, his weight was going way up and way down, and he really kind of kept that, at a steady level. And it showed in his performance. He had a lot more consistency, I guess, this year.
Okay, and the second part of that, what excites you about bringing in more in-state guys next year, such as Peyton Hall from Oakland High School, and how soon would you expect Peyton to make an impact at WVU and in the Big 12?
It really excites me to have really good in-state kids because I think, that'll show up, in the crowd. Hopefully we'll get more fans. But I think in general, if we just get good kids, we'll get more fans. In particular, Peyton's a fantastic wrestler. How quick he can make an impact, I think he can be impactful right away. We'll see if, if he's going to redshirt. I'm not sure right now, but he's certainly going to be a big part of our future.
All right, Coach, your first question here comes from John Antonic. Go ahead, John.
Along the lines, Coach, of recruiting, I noticed a couple of, I think Flo and Open Mat had your class ranked, nationally ranked, which hasn't happened around here, I guess, in a few years. Are you overall happy with the guys you were able to bring in?
Oh, we're ecstatic. Just the quality of the kid, too. We got some great wrestlers, but they're also, they're good students and good kids, and they're hard workers. And really in any sport, those are the things you're looking for. Talent, academics, and what kind of person are they? So, and I think we really did a good job kind of, doing our due diligence, looking up, calling coaches, calling people in the area, finding out about these kids. And I think it's going to, it really looks bright, our future when you bring in kids like we are, this year.
All right, your next question here from Greg Hunter. Go ahead, Greg.
So, Coach, you obviously didn't come into this blind, but in terms of the rebuilding, any surprises that you've encountered as you've gone through this? Tougher, easier? What do you thought as you're trying to rebuild this program?
Tougher. I was at one place for so long. People talk about culture. And when you have a good culture, even if you're not winning, if your culture is good, the kids know what's expected of them. They know your system. They're going to class. They're doing the right things off the mat. So, I probably underestimated how hard it would be to kind of get a winning culture in place. And I think we have it now. There's a really, even though we didn't have a great year, in the wins and losses, there's a really good feeling just, in the pavilion, just, this program's going places. So it was a lot harder, I think, than I thought.
Your next question from Kevin Kinder. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, Coach. My question's kind of a follow-up to that. this last year's record was your toughest one it looks like you've ever had as a head coach. Personally, did you have, what was your way of dealing with that, approaching it? I know you just said looking to build for the future, but was that tough going through some of that?
Yeah. I mean, the competitor, I'm a competitor. I want to win. I as much as I want to produce great young men and have people get jobs and graduate, I came to West Virginia because I want to win, and I want to win at a high level. So it was hard. It was really hard. But I think, the one nice thing about having an individual sport, kind of combined with a team sport, when your team's not doing great, it's nice when you have Noah doing pretty well. And we got a couple big wins out of, you mentioned Caleb Ray, Hornfeck, and some other guys, got some wins individually. So you can really focus on the individual a little bit to, kind of take your mind off the team woes. But it was a long year, and that's why, with this recruiting class and, we're working hard on that junior class already, as everyone is. And, things, you can always look to the future, and we're excited.
All right. Your next question from John. Go ahead, John.
Back again along the lines of the recruiting. Now, when you look at your roster, do you feel like you've got more of the weights covered now? And do you have somebody close to Noah to be able to drill with to help, keep him where he's at, maybe get him further along?
Yeah, we have two heavyweights, and we've got some kids coming in perhaps. But, one of our assistant coaches is a big guy, Cody Walters. So, that helps Noah tremendously. Yeah, I think weight class wise, we feel a lot better. We got a couple lightweights committed. We obviously got a whole bunch of middleweights. So I think we're kind of spreading them out and getting them filled in where we need them now.
All right. Your next question, Greg Hunter. Go ahead, Greg.
So, Coach, about Noah, the first time you saw him, what did you think? Did you realize that what potentially had, or is that something that has grown since you've gotten here, and how has he gotten to where he is?
Well, the first time I saw Noah was he came to camp when I was at Edinburgh. So, I don't know if he was a sophomore in high school. You'd have to ask him. He was young, and he was a big kind of athletic kid then. And he was wrestling around with a kid that we had committed from, it's interesting. We had a kid committed from Franklin, PA, and the kid came to Edinburgh. His name's Dakota Gear. And now he's at Oklahoma State, and Noah just beat him this year. But they were wrestling, and we knew how good Gear was. And I was like, wow, this West Virginia kid's pretty good. And when we got down here, I guess my first impression was, he wasn't in fantastic shape. I don't know if there was with the transition and the coaching, they had a couple weeks off. I don't know. But, we knew what we had, obviously, because I had seen him in high school. And how did he make improvements? And a lot of people have asked me this about his, big step from, whatever he was, 19 and 15. I don't know what he was, and 32 and 0. It's not one thing. He got a little bit better, in his conditioning and his strength on top. He got better in his speed. It was a little bit in all these areas that made this big, giant step. So it's not kind of one thing.
All right. Go ahead, John.
Coach, curious. I know that Noah would have gotten you points at the NCAA tournament. Perhaps even would have been on the podium, which would have boded well for your team score and your ranking. What do you have to do to improve and get your dual team season where you want it to be? What's it going to take?
We just needed talent. We need more Noahs. And it's interesting because while all the sport, every sport is different, but it's the same in that, it's what do they always say? These aren't wands, they're hands. I'm not a magician. So I can't. Noah Adams is a pretty good athlete, was three times, should have been a 4-time state champion. So we're taking someone who's pretty good and trying to make them great. It's difficult if you don't have that. You know, it's just a longer journey. You know, if you take even myself, you know, I wasn't near as good as Noah. It's just hard to take somebody less talented and get them up to the national level, you know, even to win at the Big 12 and Big 12 wrestling. It takes a long time. So what we need is just more talent. And so, you know, that's why we've really spent a lot of time recruiting. Have to.
All right, your next question from Mike Kazaza. Mike, go ahead.
Hey, Tim, how are you?
Good.
I have a question. It's been a while, and I know it's probably something not to really bring up, but it was really an interesting thing at the time when it happened with Lucas. Can you I mean, as much as you want to, I understand, but just describe and that situation, what happened, and how you and how he handles that, because that's really, really strange for him.
No,
you know, if you could talk basketball.
I guess I'll try to give you the real abridged version. At a pre-championship meeting, so the day before the tournament starts, they outline the tournament. Hey, don't forget weigh-ins are at this time, first round starts at this time, etc. Well, one of the things that was mentioned was we will not wrestle for true night 133 pounds. The top 8 guys, whoever ends up taking 8th. Now, at other weights, they wrestled for a true position. So if, like, only 4 guys qualified at one weight, and a guy took 5th, and they didn't meet, 4th and 5th didn't meet during the tournament, they would wrestle for that true 4th spot. But they said they weren't going to do it at 133, okay? I don't know why. I don't know if it was right or wrong. I just know what they said. So when Lucas lost his 7th and 8th match, he was done. And the night before, quite frankly, I was telling our sports information, he's a national qualifier because he was in the top 8. So when he lost, he went back to the hotel. And then I forget the timing, but he was already back for a while. And then they came up to me, Bob Berta did, and was like, hey, I think we got to wrestle that 133 match. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And so to give you a little more background, it makes this a really interesting story, is we went up to the head table and asked on 3 different occasions if they're going to wrestle that match, because everyone there was rumblings like, oh, they're going to wrestle this. What happened, the number 1 seed lost first round. So he came all the way back and took 9th. Well, he's not an automatic qualifier. You know, he was going to have to get an at-large bid, which he would have. Okay. But so everybody wanted him. Well, his coach and a lot of people said, oh, he should wrestle for 8th. Well, they said they weren't going to do it. So we kept going up and asking. And at one point, our assistant, Cody, went up and they laughed at him. They said, no. And they went to chuckle. They go, he's not wrestling that match. Okay. So now they're laughing at us because we keep asking. And then, of course, they came up and said, hey, you got to call him and get him over here. And I said, no, I'm not calling him. You said no. And then he called Bob Berta, who's the commissioner, he called everybody together, all the coaches. There's a protocol for, I guess, this kind of thing. They called all the coaches in a room, and the vote was 4-4, and it was broken by the man in charge. And he said, we're going to wrestle the match. So they wrestled it right before. And so I thought it was not handled well. I've never seen a tournament changed after it starts. I mean, we can argue what was right or wrong. Maybe they should have wrestled the match. And you know what? They probably should have. But that's just not how they set the tournament up. You can't change something after it starts. So the second part was, how did Lucas handle it? Like a stud. I mean, I called him and he's like, yeah, okay. I said, how do you feel? And he was beat up. You know, Lucas had a long year, and for him to qualify for the Nationals was a monstrous feat, you know, just getting that one win he needed in the wrestlebacks. And he said, I can wrestle. I said, are you sure? You know, his elbow was hyperextended. His knee was taped. He said, yeah, I wrestled just a little while ago. I'll be fine. So he didn't complain. He never even said, why do I have to? Or this is, you know, this is crap. He he said, when do we have to go? And it was inspiring, man. His response, you know, because the coaches, all of us are getting together and we're like, this is really, you know, total crud. And he handled it better than we did. You know, he's like, man, I got to wrestle. So he was a stud through the whole process. But I guess that's it in a 2 or 3 minute blur. But yeah, it wasn't handled well.
All right. Next question from Greg Hunter. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah.
Hard to follow up with that a little bit, but back to Noah a little bit. Obviously, the NCAAs didn't happen. You're biased, but give us your thought. How would he have done had he gotten there?
Well, we were pretty confident most of the year that he could compete for a national championship, just based on how he was wrestling. You know, some really good guys, how he performed at big time tournaments. He was seeded second. He was undefeated. So, you know, the sky's the limit for a guy like that. We thought he was going to win. There was a really good kid that was a national finalist before from Ohio State that was seeded first. And there's good kids everywhere. I mean, it's you know, but he would have done well.
All right, your next question. Well, we'll take 2 more questions here. If you have any more, go ahead and put them in. Otherwise, these will be the last 2. Go ahead, Kevin.
A couple questions about your facilities and how they're helping you with the recruiting and building the program. I know the wrestling pavilion had some upgrades. It's been a few years ago now, but also looking ahead to the Olympic Sports Performance Center that's part of the next round of renovations at the Coliseum. How will those help you? And, you know, what has the reception been like when you've been describing those to your recruits?
I mean, that's going to be huge. I mean, the way it's laid out is our wrestling room is like here, and then right on the other side of the wall is going to be where the weight room and you know, this center is going to be built. So it, you know, we'll tell everyone it's just a wrestling training area, but no, it's going to be huge. When you have brand new facilities, I mean, we all know that's what kids want. That's what attracts them. We already have fantastic wrestling facilities. You know, our wrestling room is great, and we got a really, really nice gift from the Women Supporting Athletics, which helped us build and kind of add to our student lounge. So I think once that weight room goes in and you know, the new training room, we will have as nice a facility as, I mean, it'll be a top 5 facility, you know, all of it. In the country. So, you know, it's a big deal, huge deal in recruiting.
All right. Well, 2 more actually. Go ahead, John.
The last one for me, Coach. I've kind of had a little bit of a theme here. You alluded about West Virginia kids in this class. I know you can't talk about guys down the road, but from the juniors, the sophomores, and what you've been able to see, is it trending up? Are you seeing more quality wrestling in West Virginia that you may have access to down the road?
I don't know about trending up, but there's always good kids. I mean, I think Lehigh had a kid this year from Parkersburg that was seeded pretty high at the Nationals. You know, we had a West Virginia kid 2 years ago or whatever it was. There's a West Virginia kid in the finals from Virginia Tech, the NCAA finals. I think between the kids we got, the one kid from Parkersburg went to Wisconsin. There was 4 kids that were top 5 or so in their weight class in the country from West Virginia. You know what I mean? So 4 of them that I know of were ranked at their weights. There's good kids. There's good high-end kids. I think the difference in this state and probably in all sports is just the depth. You know, the good kids are good. You know, they're really good. It's just the depth that's different. You know, so there's good kids coming, and we're going to try to get them all.
All right, your last question here from Mike Kazaza. Mike, go ahead.
Tim, you mentioned with reference to the in-state kids before and getting people to come out. Noah's in-state, but he's kind of a unique attraction beyond that too. To have a player like that with the streak and the hot streak he's on coming back it's like a unique opportunity to kind of build a following there too. How accurate, how useful can that be when really one of the best who can do it is going to be at your place for another year?
Yeah, another 2 years. Thank God. It's huge. And I said this to someone the other day. If Noah Adams doesn't win another wrestling match, he's already kind of really kickstarted our program with the season he had. Recruits look and they say, hey, I can win at a high level there. And that wasn't maybe happening before. You know, you might have a guy kind of have a good tournament or so, but this guy went 32-0. So from that standpoint, he's been huge just with the recruiting, and I think he will bring in more fans. You know, and right now he's developed into a leader. So he's going to be great for this recruiting class that we have, and these next 2 recruiting classes that I think are, you know, they're just going to be phenomenal classes. Somebody to look to as a leader for the next 2 years. Sometimes one guy can turn a program around, and I think that's Noah.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Coach. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Brian Mesterly here. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Grant.